Welcome to Valuation and Taxation of Affordable Dwelling Units, brought to you by the Loudoun County Commissioner of the Revenue's Office and the Department of Housing. During this presentation, we will review details about the Affordable Dwelling Unit program, as well as go over the valuation of these properties for local real estate assessment purposes.
Good morning. My name is Brian Regan with the Office of Housing, and I will be walking you through the process should you decide to sell your affordable dwelling unit, or ADU. First, as a refresher, please remember that ADUs have an overall covenant period of 50 years after its initial purchase. That's 50 years. For as long as you own your ADU, all the rules and regulations you learned about when you first purchased your property still apply. Also, the ADU is still an ADU after the initial 15-year control period expires. The biggest difference, as you'll see, is how you can sell your ADU. You must continue to live in the unit as your primary residence, and you still cannot rent the unit or use it as an investment property. So, as I referenced, there is an initial control period of 15 years after the initial purchase. Should you decide to sell your ADU within those first 15 years, the resale price is controlled, and staff will provide you with the calculation as to how much you may sell your ADU for. Within the first 15 years, an ADU may not be sold for more than the established control price and must be sold to an ADU certificate holder. This control price is calculated using the initial purchase price of the ADU, the depreciated value of any home improvements, and remember that you must obtain all applicable HOA and condo approvals, in addition to any applicable county permitting approvals, as well as changes to the Consumer Price Index, which is a measure of the average change over time in the prices paid for goods by consumers. The way in which you can sell your ADU changes, however, after the ADU has been in the program for 15 years. After the initial 15-year control period expires, the ADU can be sold at market and does not have to be sold to an ADU certificate holder. However, the difference between what the unit is sold for at market and the control value of the unit is divided equally between the seller and the county's housing trust. Seeing an example might make this easier to explain. Let's say you initially purchased your ADU for $150,000. You live in the ADU for 17 years, you love the home, you love Loudoun, but circumstances change where you must move. You inform staff that you want to move, and staff calculates the control value to be $200,000. At this point, you can sell your unit at market, and let's say you're able to sell it for $400,000. As you can see, only the difference between what you're able to sell it for at market and the control value gets split 50-50 between the seller and the county. In this example, the market value of $400,000 subtracted by the control value of $200,000 gets you to $200,000. Split equally, you receive $100,000 and the county receives $100,000. Please note, however, that all of the equity that you've built into the property up to that control value of $200,000 is 100% yours and does not get split with the county. The county cannot touch that portion of the sale. So to review, there are differences between the initial control period, which is 15 years after the initial purchase, and the extended control period, which is between 15 and 50 years after initial purchase. Within the first 15 years, the sales price is restricted in terms of how much you can sell it for and must be sold to an ADU certificate holder. Also, after the first 15 years, the difference between what the unit is sold for at market and the control value of the unit is divided equally between the seller and the county's housing trust. Also, please be mindful that if you are thinking about refinancing your ADU, you must contact staff first. The reason is that for ADUs where the covenants were recorded 2005 or after, you cannot refinance for more than the control value of the ADU. If you have any questions whatsoever, please know that the staff of the Office of Housing is always here to help.
Thank you, Brian, for that refresher on the Affordable Dwelling Unit program. Now the presentation will pivot to the valuation of the ADUs here in Loudoun County, which is done by the Loudoun County Office of the Commissioner of Revenue. The following slides will discuss changes to the assessment that will take place as your ADU expires from the 15-year control period Brian just went over. How have ADUs been assessed historically? During the initial 15-year control period, the affordable dwelling unit assessment was not based on the fair market value, but rather it was calculated on the basis of the restricted control price established by the Affordable Dwelling Unit Advisory Board and adjusted annually by the Consumer Price Index. An example of this valuation is shown here. We have an example here where the original sale price was $103,990. And what we show here is for tax year 2010, the original sale price is adjusted by the CPI for the year, which is 2.5%. So when applied to the original sale price of $103,990, the increase is $2,599.75. So the assessment for the tax year of 2010 would then be the $25,999.75 plus the original sale price of $103,990 to come up with an assessed value of $106,590. In the following year, tax year 2011, we can see that the CPI was 3.2%. When applied to the original sale price, that gives us an increase of $3,327.68. And then that amount would be applied to the prior year assessment of $106,590 to come up with an adjusted ADU price of $109,920. So that's just an example of how that CPI adjusts year over year for your ADU assessment. So ADU assessments after expired control periods. Properties have not been removed from the ADU program just because the control period has ended. What the control period does is it allows the property owner to sell the property for fair market value once the 15-year control period has ended. And because of this, the assessment will now be based on the fair market value or based on the prices that are being commanded by market transactions. However, the property will still be an ADU as administered by the Department of Housing. We'll just be assessing it differently. So why are the assessments changing? Well, Article 10 of the Constitution of Virginia requires, quote, all assessments of real estate and tangible personal property shall be at their fair market value to be ascertained as prescribed by law. So law requires us to value properties at fair market value, which is the most probable price that a property will command on the open market. Affordable dwelling units that are beyond the 15-year control period are being sold at fair market prices and therefore need to be assessed in that manner. This chart is an example of some properties that sold out of the ADU program after the 15-year control period. We have columns here for ADU purchase price and the original ADU purchase date. So you can see most of these properties sold in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And by 2017, they had met their 15-year obligation in the program and can now be sold out of the program. You can also see what they were assessed at for 2017 and then what they sold for during that calendar year. On average, properties sold about 122% over the that assessment for that year. And so this is a good indication to you as a property owner that if your ADU is coming out of the program, you can look to see market value prices upwards of 100 to 22% above what your assessment was for the prior year. So how are we going to assess you moving forward then if you're no longer going to be assessed as an ADU? Market value assessments are based on market influences. So generally, your property is going to be grouped with like type properties in your immediate market area. Typically, they're going to be the properties from your immediate subdivision. And here's some of the characteristics that we look at when we group properties together. We group them by location, by submarket area, which would be your subdivisions, by the style of house, by the age or the year that it was built, quality of construction, the size of the house, and the condition of the house. And so we take into consideration all of these different characteristics and group properties together. Then the assessments are calibrated looking at what properties in those assessment groups or those neighborhood groupings are selling for in a given year, and your assessment is calculated off of the sales of comparable properties in your neighborhood group. Right here, we just show an example of what happened with a group of ADUs that had control prices that are control periods that were expiring. So for tax year 2018, we had 390 ADUs that their control periods were ending, and they were going to need to be valued at full fair market value. Their assessments for 2017 averaged $157,346. When we moved them out and valued them at fair market value, their assessments came in on average at $321,925. So the average percent increase for those 390 properties was 105%. For those of you that are watching this and your property is coming out of the ADU program and your 15-year control period has lapsed, you can look to see on average about 105% increase in your assessment, which is about double what you would have seen in your prior year when you were valued as an ADU. And so if you're looking to do some type of estimate on your taxes for the following year, you can generally see that your assessment will probably double, and so your tax bill will probably double or slightly more than double for the next tax year. You do have the ability to appeal your assessment in Loudoun County. There are 3 different avenues that you can take to appeal it. What will happen is you're going to receive your assessment notice at the beginning of February every year. And when you receive that notice, especially in the first year that you come out of the ADU valuation, is you want to look at that value that you receive on your assessment notice, and you want to make sure that that reflects what you believe to be the price that you could get for your house as of January 1 of that year. If you do not believe that that value reflects the fair market value of your ADU, you can appeal to the Commissioner of Revenue using the administrative option, which would be the formal appeal process that you have directly after the assessment notice is received. The Commissioner of Revenue will take appeals for about a month after assessment notices are sent out. This is a formal appeal form that you submit online, and the Commissioner of Revenue will put you in contact with the assigned appraiser in the office, and they will work with you to discuss your reason for the dispute. And so that's the administrative option. The Board of Equalization would be your next option. This is another formal appeal process. The Board of Equalization is an independent panel of appointed property owners in Loudoun County. They're appointed by the Board of Supervisors to hear real estate assessment disputes and decide the correct value for the property. You'll have until June 1st to appeal to the Board of Equalization, and they typically don't start taking appeals until after the tax rate has been set in early April. The last option, and probably the least used option for residential real estate, would be the court system. You can appeal assessments to the courts if you believe that the assessment is not accurate or fair. As a reminder, here are some important dates for property owners to consider in Loudoun County. January 1 is the effective date of your annual assessment. So every year you'll get an annual assessment in Loudoun County, and the effective date of your assessment will be January 1st. In early February, you should look to receive your assessment notice in the mail. We also will post assessments online via our online parcel database, also in early February. In early March, the deadline to appeal your assessment to the Commissioner of Revenue will typically be a month from the date of the notices being mailed. And so you need to be prepared. If you do want to appeal to the Commissioner of Revenue, you need to be prepared for that deadline in early March of every year. Early April will be the deadline for elderly or disabled tax relief renewals. And so if you're starting to get into that process, if you qualify for that, you need to remember that the annual renewal for that is in early April. June 1st, like I said in the previous slide, is the deadline for any BOE, Board of Equalization appeals. And then June 5th is the deadline for your first half real estate tax payments. And so there's real estate tax payments are done in halves. So the first half is due June 5th. The second half is always due December 5th. And then December 31st, elderly or disabled tax relief deadline for first-time filers. And so if you qualify for this category of relief, the deadline for the first-time filer will be December 31st. There is a lot of information out there on the web about real estate assessments. You can find most information through our parcel database, which can be found at www.loudoun.gov/parcel database, or you can call our office at 703-777-0260. The Commissioner of Revenue will put you in contact with your assigned appraiser, and they can talk about parcel information about your specific property. You can also look up neighboring property owners' information. You can look up sales information, and you can look up assessment information, all on the parcel database. That is all public information that the Commissioner of Revenue posts on the web. Information regarding the administration of the Affordable Dwelling Unit program can also be found online at www.loudoun.gov/ADU, or by calling 703-777-0353. We thank you for tuning into this presentation, and we hope it was helpful. Thank you.